And you'll get that recording sometime tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. So if you want to go back and reference anything that is covered this evening, please feel free to do so. There's actually a questionnaire attached to that recording as well. We just ask that you take the time, fill that out. Should take you no more than 2 minutes, just a couple of questions. We obviously value your opinion and we want to have your feedback. So make sure that you are going in and filling out that information for us. We would greatly appreciate it. The chat is open, so if you do have questions throughout the chat, please feel free to post those into the chat. If you also want to come off mute and ask any questions, you can also feel free to do that, but we'll be monitoring the chat. And then at the end of the session, we will have a designated Q&A. So if you want to hold off on questions until then, completely up to you, whatever you are comfortable with. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to the Princeton Review team.
Thank you, RJ. Hi, everybody. I'm Megan Haverkamp, and I am an outreach specialist at the Princeton Review. And I work with students and people to reach their career and academic goals through test prep and getting prepared to take high stakes exams. In particular for tonight, we're talking about nursing. We have NCLEX review. So some of you may be headed that direction real soon. And before I turn it over to our expert speaker, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we have in terms of test prep for the NCLEX. To start, we have a QBank. As you know, everybody says when taking this exam, one of the top things you can do is practice, practice, practice. And so that's really what our QBank is about, 3,500 practice questions. Of those 3,500, 1,900 were purchased from the NCSBN, and of course that's the regulating body of the exam. So great questions on there. We have recently added 200 next gen questions to get you prepared for the new question types on the exam. The QBank is a subscription style. So depending on how long you make your study plan, we have a 30-day, a 90-day, or a year subscription. So you can have it to practice. For those of you that want a little more structure or would like, some people to kind of study with, we do have a live online course. This is, of course, a class with a set time and place, so kind of gives you that structure. It's about 18 hours of instruction. You have a live instructor. You can ask questions. You have classmates, so misery loves company, so you have people to form study groups with or ask those questions you didn't think of. And then we have a self-paced course, and our self-paced course was just added and is, just that. Videos, you get access to the QBank for questions, but really not as much structure. You really set your own study schedule and get to work and study for that exam. For more information, you can visit our website at princetonreview.com or go ahead and scan the QR codes to get more information about that. I also, as an outreach specialist, can do consultations. So if you want someone, talk to somebody about how to set up a study plan, what we have to offer and what might work for what your study style is. If you have just general questions about the NCLEX and where to go from there, I will give you my contact information at the end of this, as well as I will send out an email with more information, and that's totally complimentary. I'm happy to, set an appointment and talk with you about that. So with that, I am going to hand the PowerPoint over to our expert speaker, uh, Jennifer Cipriano, to give us situational awareness in nursing.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you, RJ, just for having me this evening. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jenny Cipriano. I am a content developer for the Princeton Review, very part-time. I actually am full-time nursing faculty in an undergraduate nursing program in Central Florida. So I am down in vacation land, but we're burning up down here. It is super hot. We are ready for fall, and I hope that you all are enjoying maybe some cooler weather. But I'm really excited to be here this evening. Just a little bit about me. I've been a nurse for about 15 years. I've worked in professional development. I was a nurse educator for a trauma center, large trauma center in Central Florida. And then again, I'm full-time faculty in an undergraduate nursing program. I'm especially interested in transition to practice and sort of that transition for senior nursing students into professional practice. So being able to just develop some of these presentations has been really fun and really personal for me. So I hope that you all enjoy some of these presentations. So what we're going to talk about this evening is situational awareness in nursing. And so I'll just sort of go through the objectives briefly, and then we'll kind of dive into the material. Again, if you have any questions as we go through, please go ahead and type them into the chat. We'll be monitoring that, or please feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask the question. Very informal. So what we're going to be covering this evening is we're going to define situational awareness. We're also going to discuss the importance of it both professionally and personally. We'll cover professionally first. We want you to be able to increase your understanding of situational awareness in your nursing practice. We're also going to cover recognizing factors that can impact situational awareness in nursing, and then some strategies to try to improve your situational awareness. And also how it relates to your personal safety. So not only professionally, but also personally. So what is situational awareness? By definition, situational awareness is really the ability to observe and understand our environment, sort of recognizing potential issues before they occur and then being able to take appropriate action. So situational awareness really formed its roots in industries that require split-second decisions. So think of military exercises or law enforcement operations, some aviation emergencies. In healthcare particularly, situational awareness links the understanding of a patient's current and future needs to clinical decision making. So that being said, you probably heard clinical judgment over and over, and that is what the new next generation NCLEX is that clinical judgment and trying to develop that. I would say if we were to put a Venn diagram, sort of side by side of situational awareness and clinical judgment, we're going to see some of these things overlap. So as we go through the presentation, this may be sort of familiar and sound almost like clinical judgment. So let's discuss situational awareness in a professional setting. So really in nursing, it refers to the ability of healthcare professionals to maintain that comprehensive understanding of an immediate clinical environment. It involves much more than that. When you think about situational awareness in nursing, it really involves being aware of current status of your patient, conditions, the resources that you have available, also any potential risks or hazards, and then the overall context of sort of the healthcare setting. So think about, the multidisciplinary team or other things that are happening within the clinical setting. Nurses' situational awareness can, as you grow your situational awareness, really effectively anticipating and identifying needs of your patient and being able to respond to those changes or emergencies as they come. So this does, again, require attentiveness, critical thinking, just keen observation skills, and we'll talk about that. We're going to go through a few case studies, as well as effective communication. So this is just a pretty simple example of situational awareness in nursing. So let's read through this. As we just discussed, situational awareness has to do with our immediate environment. So this case study example is exactly that. So a nurse checks on her coworker's client while the coworker is with a deteriorating patient. The nurse knows that her coworker will fall behind in their tasks, assessments, and hourly rounding, so she steps in to help. So this is sort of a simple example of situational awareness, how you as the nurse working in a unit with other nurses, other patients, could potentially just see a need within the unit, kind of understand the environment and be able to step in and help. So as we understand this comprehensive environment that we do sort of function in nursing, we want to be able to see that in the clinical setting. So how does this benefit our patients? How does this benefit our practice as nurses? And so this is some of the benefits that we can have by having keen observation and situational awareness skills. So it does better patient outcomes. So if we do utilize situational awareness properly, we can pick up on things, right? Any changes in our patient's health condition. And this allows for quick adjustments as the status changes. And we'll go through an example in just a moment. But it helps us ultimately to become more proactive than reactive. And that, I think, is any new graduate nurse's sort of goal, right? You want to be able to anticipate what's next, not necessarily only be in a reactionary state. So this can help in those situations. It also improves patient satisfaction. So if patients find that they're cared for, they themselves are cared for, and their health concerns are properly addressed, they're going to be more satisfied with their treatment and the nursing staff and healthcare staff that are caring for them and providing it. Fewer patient safety errors are also a benefit. So as we develop our situational awareness, we're able to better perceive and predict errors that could possibly impact our patient's care, such as noticing an unusual spike in your patient's blood pressure, or this might indicate that there's a problem with their medication. And again, we'll talk through a case study in just a moment and kind of plug this in. And then finally, it's increased, another benefit is increased nurse retention. So if you feel competent, if you feel successful, if you feel like you are being successful when you're treating your patients, this is going to be an encouragement for you personally to stay and continue practicing where you are within your clinical setting. So just some of the benefits of situational awareness here. So I always like to bring it back to some kind of theoretical model, just because that's the framework on so many things that are built within our nursing discipline. So this is actually a model that is not a nursing theory, but it comes from it comes from a model that was used in the U.S. Air Force. So I'll tell you a little bit about this model, and then we'll plug this in. So this came from Micah Ensley, Dr. Micah Ensley, and she in 1995 is a former U.S. Air Force chief scientist. She is a situational awareness theorist, and she came up with this theory to define 3 levels of situational awareness that are commonly referenced today. So we'll go through each level, and then I really want to put this into a patient scenario so we can kind of see how this all fits. So level 1 is considered perception. So here in this level, you can see it says we're recognizing and we're monitoring. This is where we as clinicians are gathering patient information. This is sort of your phase where you're analyzing data, right? You're performing physical assessments, you are reading medical charts, reviewing data, maybe you're speaking to other team members about your patient. But at this point, we're going to be paying attention to any anomalies, any changes in the patient's data through this gathering sort of stage where we're recognizing and monitoring. From there, we're going to go to level 2, which is the comprehensive stage. And so here is where clinicians will analyze and will examine the information gathered and will use the results to basically come up with a plan. We're going to make sense of it and come up with some type of actionable decision that will help our patient's treatment plan. And then level 3, she talks about projection. So with this information that we've had and the decisions that we've made from the first and second levels, at this point, we can predict future events that may occur. So really these levels are key for nurses who want to be proactive rather than reactive. And let's go ahead and put it in a scenario. So here's our example. A nurse on the surgical unit is caring for a client on post-op day 1 after undergoing a total right knee arthroplasty. The client's blood pressure is 140/88 millimeters of mercury. And this is the patient data that you have. It's not actual numbers, but go with me. Heart rate and blood pressure are elevated from baseline, no history of hypertension, and the patient has a pain score on a numeric score of 8 out of 10. So if we plug this in and we go to level 1, which is perception, you can see that vital signs, physical assessment, maybe medications, and any prior history would come into play here. So now we're in the comprehensive phase. So how do we make sense of this data? We know that the patient has an elevated heart rate, elevated blood pressure. They don't have a history of hypertension, but they do have a pretty high numeric scale. So we know that this patient has had recent surgery. So now that we've come up with a plan and we're making sense of this, the reasonable action would be to not give a blood pressure medication, right? But to consider giving PRN medication. So in this case, we have PRN narcotic pain medicine that we can give. And so as we move into the third phase, which is projection, this is a projected impact of our action. So now we've made a plan. We're going to administer the PRN narcotic pain medication. And what's the impact of our actions? Hopefully, the goal is that we have pain control. And hopefully with that pain control, that will reduce blood pressure. But we also have to think about what could go wrong, right? So our projected impact of critical events. So by giving narcotic pain medication, we know that this can decrease a patient's level of consciousness. It can also cause hypotension, which is an undesirable effect, and also decrease their respiratory rate or decrease their drive to breathe, impacting oxygenation. And ultimately, you would want to monitor your patient for hypoxia. So this is just sort of using that theory to plug in a clinical example. So I hope that that makes a little bit more sense for those three levels. And again, this can help us to really build our situational awareness so that we can become more proactive rather than reactive. Okay, so let's go into another case study. There are also factors that can impact situational awareness in nursing. We're going to look at this case study and discuss the different factors, and we'll kind of highlight them as we go through on the next slide. So this is Sarah. She's a nurse working on a surgical unit. Sarah arrives to work 20 minutes late after being stuck in traffic due to an accident on the interstate. She arrives to find the unit is short-staffed and 2 other nurses are also stuck in traffic and will be late. This is Sarah's third 12-hour shift in a row, and she didn't sleep well last night. The nurse she receives shift report from is in a hurry and communicates minimal information before rushing to clock out. 3 call bells are going off at the same time, and Sarah's phone is ringing with a call from a client's family member requesting an update. Her personal cell phone is now ringing with a call from her alarm company stating her home alarm system is going off. She opens the electronic health record to find stat orders for labs and imaging placed 1 hour ago on one of her assigned clients. Another nurse finds Sarah to let her know that the surgeon is rounding on her client and is requesting information. So as much as we'd like to think this is just a bad situation for Sarah, and it is, and it's very overwhelming, it could be very much a reality for any nurse walking into the unit. So let's talk about some of these different factors that we can see throughout Sarah's case study. So when we think about factors that can impact situational awareness, distractions are huge. Phone calls, we can see that in her case study, right? The call bells going off, her personal needs at home. All of those things can be a distraction in the moment and could potentially impair her ability to make decisions for patients or really recognize and notice that she needs to within her job. The workload, that's another factor. They're short-staffed. We can see that within the case study. Other nurses are late. She has a pretty high acuity of her clients that are assigned. We can see that she had stat orders, the surgeon's rounding on her patient. There's just some other things that are going on in the needs of the healthcare team. Also with workload, fatigue can be impacted as well, or another factor. And we can see that in her case study, this is her 3rd day in a row, and she's just tired. She didn't sleep well the night before. So she's coming in and she's not quite fully awake and with it yet, and she's very distracted. Again, sleep and alarm fatigue can come into play, as well as communication. So in this case, she had sort of a rushed report. The nurse that was going to go off shift really needed to get home, and so decided she was going to give a quick shift report and be out of there. And in this instance, she missed the stat orders. So now Sarah's coming in on her shift, and she does not have the orders were essentially placed an hour ago, not on her shift. So now she is having to do these stat orders to make sure that the patient receives the care that they need. So all of these things can impact situational awareness. And now let's discuss some different ways that we can improve situational awareness. The thing with situational awareness, as well as clinical judgment, oftentimes we teach in nursing school, and you all know this, those tactile skills, right? Those psychomotor skills that you learn and you become so good at. But really situational awareness is not a tactile skill. So it is something that can be learned, and I don't want you to think that it can't be improved upon, because it absolutely can. It can be developed and improved with practice. So we're going to talk about just a few of those things here. So there are actually evidence-based tests, self-assessments that facilities can utilize to have employees or students be able to self-assess their ability to respond in a situation. Also, improving observational skills is another thing that we can do. So things that I think about, and I was actually just at clinical with a group of students this morning, things that you sort of don't think about as a student, and you guys can start to develop this now, is, just even walking by, like, let's say a cardiac monitor, and unless it's alarming, maybe you don't notice it. But starting to notice those things that are there, that's data that you can gather, right? Even though that there's not an alarm going off. Another example could be you're walking by a patient's room, the call light's not going off, but you peek inside and you see what's going on. I'm just sort of expanding your peripheral vision and finding out what is going on in the unit around you. That can be really helpful to try to improve your observational skills as you move forward in your professional practice. Managing distractions is another way that we can do that. So I actually wanted to ask everyone here, what are some things that you're distracted by, let's say at clinical or even in your classroom setting, and what are some ways that you've utilized to manage those distractions? And I'll just sort of open it up for a minute. You can type in the chat or you can unmute.
I think they're being shy.
That's okay.
Anyone?
So,
oh, there's one.
Oh, I see a little, yep, I see it pop up. Phones. Okay, I didn't see the first one because I can't see the whole chat. Heather said phones. I'm not sure, Megan, if you can see the first one. I can't see it.
Oh, you can't see the second one? Phones, students on their phones.
It's on their phones, yes.
Distracted by students on their phones, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and we all have like tried to multitask, right? And some people are very good at it. I am not somebody who's good at it, especially over a long period of time. I have noticed that I just really need to focus in on one thing. I see when I was in class, oh, I went away. Interruptions during MedCast, that's really good, Cynthia.
Did you get the one when I was in class? I would sit in the front. Yep.
Go ahead. Can you restate that one?
When I was in class, I would sit in the front of the class so I would not be distracted by anything.
That is, yeah, I have many students that do that. They're like, this is my seat for this semester, and that's great. And you've learned that about yourself, right? So that's a great way to manage distractions. Those are great examples. Thanks, you guys. So other things that I think about are just, silencing certain notifications, right? Like, we don't need to know that on your Apple Watch or whatever, smartwatch you have, that you have an email that's to your personal email account. You don't necessarily need to know that every waking moment at the clinical setting, right? Absolutely, text messages can be urgent, but that's just an example. Other things that I think about in the clinical setting are, what about like your patient that you have that maybe is in pain? Like, let's go back to that other example. And let's say their heart rate is 105, and you know that you are going to get them pain medication. You're doing something to try to manage this pain, but your alarms are set where the high range on the heart rate is 100. So this alarm is just going off over and over and over. Just being able to set those parameters a little bit higher based on your patient's current condition. We would always want to set safe alarms, but that's just another example I could think of, where you can sort of manage those things in your immediate setting so that you can help to minimize those distractions. Good, thank you guys for sharing. Staying focused is another thing, and you guys gave some good examples of that. I think minimizing distractions, managing distractions helps us all to stay focused. Utilizing technology as well. And we're going to see in this next piece of the case study how she utilizes technology to help this patient. And then also team communication. So all of these bullet points that we went over here, we're actually going to apply here in this case study. So let me read through this evolving case study. Okay, poor Sarah. She takes a deep breath and she does her best to remain focused. She answers her work phone and asks if she can take the family member's name and phone number and explains that she'll call back as soon as she's available with an update. Her home alarm system has been falsely alarming all week. She sends a quick text to her husband from her personal cell phone, asks him to contact the alarm company, and he does. Sarah then calls her charge nurse and asks him to meet the surgeon in her client's room to help answer questions, stating she has stat orders for a client and she would be there as soon as possible. She also communicates that there are multiple call lights going off and she'll do her best to answer them or to delegate the task. So Sarah gives priority to the client who has stat labs and imaging ordered. She suspects there's something acute happening with this client, so she goes to the bedside. She performs a physical assessment. She also logs into the electronic health record and starts to collect data while working on the stat orders. The charge nurse meets the surgeon for Sarah and is also able to pull a float staff to the unit to be able to help until the other nurses arrive. All the call lights end up being answered. Sarah's able to complete the stat labs, help her patient, get transported to radiology for her imaging, the patient's imaging, and her charge nurse is able to check on her other assigned clients while she is off the unit. So this all worked out. In the moment, it sounded like just the world was falling, right? Everything was happening at once. But you can see how using observational skills, managing her distractions, staying focused when she needed to, sort of taking one thing at a time, being able to utilize technology. So she was able to open up that electronic health record while she was there at the bedside, also performing the task of the stat labs that she was getting done, trying to gather more data on her patient. And then she was able to use team communication, just letting her charge nurse know what was happening. Oftentimes, I feel like as a new grad, this is so hard to say, I need help. So this is a great scenario that sort of highlights that. Go ahead and call, make sure you let people know what is going on, because at the end of the day, no one is perfect. Even a seasoned nurse is going to be overwhelmed by the situation. But I think being able to call, let everyone within the healthcare or your immediate supervisor know that you need help, or a buddy next to you, another nurse next to you. This can be really helpful, because really at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that the patients get the care that they need. And no one in this situation is going to be able to do all of these things. So this was a good example of how to use teamwork and how to use your resources. All right, so personal safety is also an important topic in situational awareness. We just went through the professional piece, so we're going to talk about more personal safety now. This is a quick case study to highlight some key points about personal safety. So this is Emily. She frequently works the late night shifts at a busy hospital. She's at the end of her shift. She walks to the parking garage to get to her car. Recognizing the importance of personal safety, Emily practices situational awareness, so all of those elements that we just talked about, and she's navigating the parking garage effectively to ensure her well-being. So when we talk about personal safety, and these are things that you have probably already heard before, and you may currently be practicing, which is wonderful, but just something to absolutely address when we're talking about situational awareness, your personal safety as well. So one of the key things that you can do is pay attention to your surroundings, right? Being able to look at least 30 feet further in front of you and around will help your brain to pick up on those things that seem a little bit off, especially if there's extra distance that you are able to visualize in front of you. So sort of not having that tunnel vision, we'll talk about this in a minute, but not being distracted with AirPods or headphones, and sort of being in the zone, but being aware of your surroundings, especially when you're alone and in this situation. Number two is to constantly scan left to right. Don't just look forward. Again, taking in your entire environment. So even at times you should look behind you, right? Because that is going to alert someone who may be watching you that you are aware, that you are looking around. This will help to make sure that you are not an easy target. Altering your travel routes when driving is another key point. It's easy to fall into a routine, and really what the evidence shows is that if you switch up your driving routines, it'll actually help trigger your brain to pick up on different things and sort of notice. We've all had that instance where you're driving to a location you drive to all the time, and you get there and you think, how did I get here? You know, you got there safely, right? But we're sort of in autopilot. So changing things up can help to just keep you more aware and being able to have that perception that you need. Putting your phone away and taking your headphones out, that one is pretty obvious. Making sure that you are just aware to the world, not looking like a victim. So this came from a police department, these tips, but your body language, your posture, eye contact, actually projected confidence can help. It can go a long way. It can help even when you're uncomfortable, to help you to have the confidence to be a little bit more comfortable. And this tells potential criminals that you're not the victim that they're looking for. And then finally, to trust your intuition. We all have that gut instinct, right? That thing that sort of tells us something isn't right. Just make sure that you are aware of your surroundings, and if you feel that way, to walk faster, to go to a public place, to go to a store. We discussed before when we were talking about this piece of the, or this tip, excuse me, that if you are being followed, let's say in your vehicle, knowing where the local police department is. So if you do move to a new town, let's say after graduation, and you take a position somewhere that you've never been before, knowing where your local police department is a really, really great thing, because if you did have to drive there, you would know exactly where to go. So this is just another diagram of levels of alertness. It's not necessarily a theory, but I just really liked it when I was researching this topic. And so this is just sort of general. It could be professional, it could be personal, but it sort of goes through the levels of from tuned out to high alert. So when we're tuned out, this is the example I just gave, where you're driving somewhere that you've driven a million times, and you get there and you go, how did I get here? Or who drove? You know, you're used to it. This is where we are fully on autopilot. As we move sort of up this this arrow, this focused awareness and relaxed awareness is sort of where we want to live in professional and in personal life. And so this will help us be more proactive than reactive. So an example of relaxed awareness or focused awareness. So if we take the driving example, let's say you're driving the car with a new driver. I have an almost 16-year-old, and this will be me soon. But that relaxed awareness of when you're trusting that they know what they're doing. They've probably taken driver's ed, that's fine. You're sort of in the passenger seat, but you're looking around. That would actually be more like focused awareness. But this is a great place to sort of live, where you're watching their every move because you need to. That would be an example of proactive level of awareness. And then on high alert, this is where, let's use the driving example again. You're driving and it's downpouring, right? So you are on high alert then. You are looking at every single piece of the road in front of you. This is going to come into play at certain times, both professionally and personally, when you are going to have to be on high alert. But where we want to sort of live is in that focused or relaxed awareness, and that'll help us to have that proactive level. All right, so just some final thoughts. Situational awareness, again, it's a skill, non-tactile, that can be developed and improved with practice. Being observant, maintaining your understanding of your surroundings, and staying alert, you can enhance your ability to assess and respond effectively to various situations, both professionally and personally. We know that situational awareness improves client outcomes, patient satisfaction, reduces our safety errors, and increases nurse retention. And finally, again, we want to remain proactive versus reactive. Go to the next one. This is just the last slide. Situational awareness saves lives, and we can see why. But again, I think this goes back so much to when you think about situational awareness, and you all are entrenched in nursing school, and we're thinking about clinical judgment in the professional setting specifically. This really aligns well with what you're learning about clinical judgment, where we're recognizing cues, right? We're analyzing data. Those things sort of, they do line up, and we can make decisions based on that data in our experience. So that is the end of the presentation, and I'll sort of open it up for any questions. You feel free to unmute yourself, or if you want to use the chat.
Thank you, Jenny.
Welcome. Heather, thank you.
Yep, thank you. It says thank you so much. Also, for those of you, this is my email. Again, if you have questions, anything on this topic or the NCLEX or how to build a study plan or our study materials, feel free to reach out to me. And certainly if there's any questions, we're here.
As people are thinking of questions, just a reminder that this session was recorded. So if you do want to go back and reference anything that was covered tonight, you can certainly do so by going back and viewing that recording. That recording will be sent out tomorrow. So just a reminder, keep an eye out for that, as well as the questionnaire attached to that recording. So make sure that you're accessing that. And then anybody, any questions, feel free to post them in the chat or take yourself off mute and ask away. All right. Well, thank you both, Jenny and Megan, for jumping in, presenting this evening. We greatly appreciate it, and thank you everybody for joining us. And like I said, this was recorded; it'll be sent out. But thank you both for jumping in tonight, presenting. We do greatly appreciate it.
Definitely. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Have a great rest of your evening.